You ever wonder why it's so hard to think positive and to stay positive? Why we're so attracted to negative things, to unpleasant news, shock value, all that kind of thing? Well, turns out we're not so crazy. It actually stems back to our caveman days when it's actually the electrical signal in our brain is heightened. It's stronger. It has a greater surge for negative stimuli versus positive stimuli. Why? Because what our brain was doing, it was searching for potential threats and dangers. So essentially, we were designed to protect ourselves. Our brain is protecting us from danger. So that's why negative things, we kind of react to them more, because we're designed that way. But it doesn't have to be, you could say, well, then are we just screwed? Is this just like, if this is our default, are we, all these courses and all these things that I try to do to try to be positive, and I just revert back to this like negative dwelling in my head, are we screwed? If we evolve this way, is there any hope for human beings? I'll put it this way. Just because you may have alcoholism in your genetic makeup, in family history, doesn't mean that you are going to be an alcoholic. It's not necessarily your fate, even if it may be in your genes, even if you have a propensity to it. So it's the same with negative thinking. Just because this is our default, which sucks, I know, to react to more negative things over positive things, doesn't mean that it has to be our fate. We just have to be a little more mindful. So no, we're not screwed. I think a lot of it, it's like, if we evolved this much, can we evolve to where we react more to positive things than negative things? Well, I'm not a scientist. I'll leave that up to the scientists. But in my opinion, I feel like it has a lot to do with levels of consciousness. As we're seeing, everybody's on different levels. But I think as we raise the consciousness of the human being, we may see an effect later on. It may take some time, not overnight, not from a YouTube video, but I firmly believe that as human beings, if we actually put some work into it and really work on our own self-awareness and recognition, that we can eventually evolve our brains maybe over time. I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but this is what I'm going to believe, because I don't want to live my life just in toxicity. Right? So in this video, I'm going to give you 5 tips to help you flip the script and reprogram this negative pattern of thinking that we've been gifted to take. Number 1 thing to remember is that everything you ingest, you have to digest. Everything you ingest, you have to digest. So positivity is kind of seen like a foreign intruder to our body, whereas negative stuff, we're used to it. It's like, this feels like home, to be like angry or be attracted to this kind of stuff. So we really have to pay attention to what we are consuming throughout the day, because this is going to make a difference. So sometimes it's a matter of filtering our environment, the people around, social media, how much we're exposing ourselves to stuff, because negativity can be like our drug. We can get addicted to it, just like we can get addicted to caffeine, to food, to drugs, to alcohol. We can get addicted to toxic stuff just because it's in our blood, right? So it's like we need more of it. We feed off of it in a sort of way. But if we're mindful about what we're ingesting in the first place, then it's going to be easier to digest. Number 2, transferring brain-centered living to heart-centered living. So you have to identify your triggers, emotional triggers. I'll give you a great example. I could just say the word politics, and you're going to have triggers come up for you just because of the state of the world right now, and emotions are flying high. There's a lot of anger. You're going to be probably triggered by some of that, or I could say another word that you have an emotional bond with. So what the brain does, it forms this bond with something, and it relates it back to something maybe from the past or a bad experience, and it heightens that sensitivity around that stimulus. So you have to identify what those emotional triggers are and realize that, when you're coming from just living your life up here, your brain is going to have a million emotional connections to stuff. So you have the brain, you have the conscious ego, which is very externally motivated, which is like, I need to be right to others. Whereas the heart-centered living is more internally focused, where it's like, I need to be right to me, to my true self. So externally motivated, the ego feeds off of like emotional triggers, anger, proving yourself right, getting revenge, all these kind of things, versus the heart, which is like, I just need to be true to me. What's right for me? So the best way to do this, I would say, is before you just impulse react to stuff, take like a couple steps back and breathe before you just react. Mindfulness is the key to transferring energy from the brain into the heart. Okay, really feeling into your body. What am I feeling? If I have an emotional trigger, why am I having it? Okay, where's the connection? Number 3, when you're trying to stay positive in a toxic world, accept that you will probably be the minority. I like to look at it like a video game. So you're this video game character and you're like jumping and dodging over monsters, trying to like grab you, right? And just make you part of the collective. So you're going to be hit, if you're trying to be positive in life, you're going to be hit with a lot of resistance from people, or either in their ego, or people who are really trying to get you back into that default setting, into that place, because it's more comfortable for them. It's gonna be, uncomfortable for you to live off brand or go outside the realm of what the default is. So just be aware that you're gonna be hit with a lot of resistance, a lot of people who may judge you, may mock you, may make fun of you, may call you weak or powerless, but it shows a lot of strength to live in your truth, to not be sucked in, to not feed into engage with the monster. So it's going to be hard, but you have to remember to stay grounded and just accept that you're going to meet resistance, not only within yourself, because your brain is going to want to just resort to the stimuli and protect itself and potential danger. And it says, I don't like, this is out of my realm of normalcy, of what I'm comfortable with. I'm comfortable with reacting to dangers and looking out for threats and stuff. So God forbid I open myself up and be compassionate and loving, and it doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel right, even though it is right for your true self. It's just the brain is going to resist it, and the collective unit is going to try and resist it and have you feed back and become part of like that blob or that mass. So as you're trying to kind of lift yourself up, states of consciousness or vibration, you're going to have a lot of things trying to pull you back down into that default setting kind of thing. So you're going to be met with a lot of resistance, or people saying, get with reality, this is not how reality works, and all kinds of stuff. But just remember that you have to just accept this as part of the process. Number 4, and this is one that's not really talked about a lot when it comes to like positive thinking and trying to really flip the script on and reprogram from all that like toxic stuff in your life. Beware of false prophets. And what I mean by false prophets, there are people out there, and maybe you've witnessed this, I know I have, who claim to be all about love and light, but underneath there's still this level of hate and separation. And it's like this, it's like they're good at disguising it, but not. I mean, you see this a lot on social media, these people who are very preachy, I guess you could say. So really be aware of the people who are boastful, preachy, condemning in a sort of way, like they're all about love and raising vibration, but underneath there's still a layer of hate. Let me know if you have experienced this. I'm sure you have. I have a lot, and you can just kind of see through the person, a lot of people out there right now. And yeah, I mean, this is something to really be aware of, not get sucked into that kind of thing where they're trying to sway you or trying to bring you in, because this is still like a level of a lower, more toxic level where, you know, if you're not kind of following in their footsteps or thinking the way that they do, that that something's wrong with you or something like that, and trying to pull you back down to a level. So I don't know. That's just something that I've observed. So let me know if you have observed it as well. And number 5 is think from an anatomical standpoint. So kind of be the observer and shift your perception on negative things. So when you're getting trapped in like negative thinking, toxic stuff, you're dwelling in it, switch your focus and be like the scientific you, where you're really analyzing your brain, the anatomical brain, not the brain inner critic that's just driving you nuts and you hate it and you fight with it. Don't resist it. Try to understand it. It's like you study it. Know that the brain is there not to harm you. It's not against you. It's not your enemy. It's just a piece of your genetic makeup. And you were given a brain from your ancestors that you've evolved from to protect you from potential threats and dangers again. So it's nothing more than that. So when you're in a loop of constant negativity, just realize that that is the survival mechanism coming out. Not to say that it's always right, because the brain is great at designing scenarios and narratives that aren't necessarily true, because it's always trying to fill in the blanks of what it doesn't know. It's kind of like social media. You know, people have only a couple facts or truths, and then they just make up the rest. They make up the rest of the shit along the way about what narrative they want to see or believe. And usually it's based on a collective unit as well, because there's a lot of emotions tied to that. And that's kind of the monster again, kind of feeding, trying to, like, you know, the big energy drain of people. So look at it from an anatomical point of view. Don't hate your brain. Don't hate yourself, God forbid. Just know that, okay, we're wired to respond to negative things. That's why we're attracted to it, but understand why. It stems back from our ancestors, okay? And while it may not benefit as much today, because we're not running from necessarily, you know, wild lions and stuff out there, we're protecting ourselves in other ways, okay? But at the same time, this wiring that we have makes it hard for us to flip it, because we're going against not only our own default system programming, but also the collective and what everybody else's default is, per se. So it's going to feel weird. It's going to feel uncomfortable, which is why, you know, breaking a habit or starting something new is always difficult, and you have to do it with repetition. And the first step is awareness in the first place of those emotional triggers, of what you're feeling, not looking at it as a negative thing and fighting against it, but trying to understand it more so. That's going to be huge help. So while negativity can be contagious, as we know, we don't have to buy into it. We don't. It just takes a little bit of awareness, a little bit of work on our part. I'm not saying it's easy, because believe me, I get trapped in patterns where you're just like, you want to kind of like pull your brain out, right? Because you don't necessarily want to be in this state of just thinking negative all the time or being angry. I don't think humans want to be angry all the time. It's uncomfortable for the body, but it's like we're in a constant fight or flight kind of mode. But it does require you to take a look at a bunch of these things that I mentioned and understand that it does not have to be your fate, okay? Your fate can open you up to greater things where we evolve more so. And the more the individual is conscious, the more the individual is living from a more heart-centered place, the more the individual is more aware of their reactions, the more it's going to eventually spread across the collective, okay? But it starts with the individual, with one person, and that's you and me, right? So anyway, I hope you found this video helpful. Let me know your comments below. We're not doomed to a life of negativity. I think a lot of it has to do with limiting our exposure, again, what we're ingesting. A lot of that has to do with social media, with the news, with who we associate and surround ourselves with, even our environment, where we live. If we live in a very noisy, disruptive place where we never balance it out with peace for ourselves and grounding, then it's going to affect us, because we're always going to be in a very reactionary state where we have to keep working on it. So anyway, hit that like button, share it with your friends, subscribe. I put out new videos every single week for you on all kinds of cool topics. I truly appreciate you supporting this channel, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.